because then you can have fun and you can show up and have great energy and feel supported and nourished and excited and VIP. Like that's the feeling you want to translate on camera.
Well, welcome to this episode of Think Like a Producer. Today we're going to talk about planning for your video shoots. There's one question that I have for you, Christine.
Oh, okay.
How would you know unless you know?
There's no way. Honestly, every producer we've ever talked to is like, I had no idea until I did a shoot. And then I suddenly realized all the things that I needed to plan for. So
you have to experience it.
You have to experience it.
There's no other way. And honestly, personally, I kind of stirred away from our normal. We were doing podcasts. I mean, there's hundreds of episodes, years and years in, and I stopped and just went on a bit of a bender with just a bunch of different productions, commercials, TV shows, docu-series. And it was such an eye-opener for me to see how much goes into planning things that might literally take 30 seconds for you to watch on TV or right before you try to skip a YouTube ad. And, this took 2 full days, 2 12-hour days, 24 hours, 30 plus, especially the producers who've been planning it for over a week, for over 2 weeks just to get it done. But I would have no idea unless I was in the field working on these projects and understanding it. And that's the benefit of, not to toot our own horn, but like this podcast, is that we're trying to get as much information out to you as possible, because there's no way that you would know what to expect to go wrong or to be ahead of, or to think of, even just permits for streets and different things. If you bring out a camera with a microphone that's not attached to it, or, you're miking people up and you just want to be on the street filming, plenty of people have gotten away with it. But there's certain areas you have to have a permit or you can be fined thousands of dollars. So instead of you investing thousands of dollars into the studio and into the crew, now you're just paying a ticket because you didn't know that you needed a permit to film on that particular street. So again, this is just all to say it's great to experience these things. It's great to know people who have been through it all, as much as possible, to be able to get through the planning of these particular things that you want to do. Now today, we're going to go over that with our guest, Heather, and we're going to talk about planning and preparing for shoots. And it's going to be, to me, hopefully one of the most eye-opening things, but I think it'd be fun to just share like the good and the bad, like share like those unexpected things that just pop up that you would never know. So I'm kind of really excited to hear Heather's stories later on when we bring her in.
For sure. She's awesome. And she has some great insights. So another thing we want you to think about if you're already getting overwhelmed, this is another reason to hire a crew who knows what they're doing. So for as an example, when people book a shoot through Worthville Media or at the studio, we do pre-production calls with them, and it just depends on the shoot, how many we'll do. Maybe we'll do 1, maybe we'll do 2. But essentially what I'm doing as the producer in a pre-production call is I'm getting really clear with them about exactly the amount of content. Like, are we shooting 5 episodes and a trailer? Are we shooting 3 different masterclass videos? Are we shooting this number of social clips? So then I have the plan down on my schedule. Then we're also figuring out, like, are we doing wardrobe changes? Are we bringing in multiple guests? Like, how many people need to be featured on camera at what time? We're also thinking through how many breaks we need to take, right? Because if you tell me, hey, I want to record 10-minute episodes for a YouTube miniseries, I know that means we need to only record 2 at a time, and then you need a break. Because if you're the only person on camera, and you need to be on camera for all 10 episodes, you're going to get real tired. And you need energy breaks, you need water breaks, you need coffee breaks, you need lunch breaks, you need brain breaks. So that's a big part. And like Tiff said, if you've never done it, it's really hard to appreciate just how much energy recording content will take out of the person or people on camera. So factoring in breaks is huge. And then also understanding, let's say you have a crew for 10 hours, you cannot shoot for 10 hours. Like, you can't expect, even if you had like multiple people on camera, you cannot expect them to perform at 6 p.m. how they were performing at 9 a.m. Like, we're humans, we're not machines. So oftentimes pre-planning a shoot is figuring out like, how many people are we switching out on camera? Can we actually go for 10 hours because we have fresh people on camera the whole time? Or do we need to do 2 half-day shoots because the person on camera is the same person and they are going to be wiped after 4 hours and we need to pick back up the next day. So those are just some basic things we're covering in pre-production. Obviously, we're making sure we understand the concept of whatever's being shot and the brand and the colors and the graphics and the styling, so we get the set right and we get the lighting right. But those are the obvious things. The non-obvious things are planning for energy, planning for breaks, planning for realistically, how long is it going to take to shoot this much content? You may hear, let's say, 5 episodes of a limited series podcast that's going to be filmed with guests and the same host. And you're like, oh my gosh, done in a day for sure. How long could it take to record 5 30-minute episodes? Guess what? That's a 2-day shoot. Like, for sure, that's a 2-day shoot.
I mean, you make a good point. The setups too, like, especially when you're working in unfamiliar areas, to get the lights, to get the camera angles, you know, the creativity, you can shoot the same thing 3, 4, 5 different ways. So to actually settle on, this is going to be the look, this is the way we're going to deliver it. I think the best department that I was learning in, that was kind of a huge insight, was working in the assistant director department on set, because they have to schedule when the crew comes in so they have enough time. The talent comes in at a totally different time, and then they have to put in the makeup and the wardrobe. You know, that's going to take 90 minutes depending on the larger shoots, depending on the situation that we're in. So that was really interesting to see. Bumping mics. That was really interesting to see how the schedule can be different. And like you said, like, crew and talent are just different types of people to work with. You know what I mean? Crews needs one thing and talent needs something else. So it's amazing, because as we were talking about, like, man, there's so much that goes into it. Unless you're in the practice of it, it kind of feels like riding a bike once you're in it and you've been doing it for a long time. But when you actually break down how many different steps it is just in the planning phase, it's something that you want to invest your time in, and invest the amount of even, like you said, like the breaks too, because I think you and I, we planned this podcast. We planned how we were going to do season 3. And you've had to re-explain to me every episode that we've chosen. But it's because when, you know, a week or however long ago we were talking about this, a month ago, we were talking about this, there was a place I was mentally a month ago that I'm not in a month later, you know. And so even talent and crew and ideas and things that can develop as you go through. So yeah, planning it's not overwhelming. I know I'm going through a lot, but it can be fun. It can be efficient. And I think the crazy thing about planning is you also have to plan for the worst thing to happen too, for it to rain, for it to whatever, you know, for someone to get a flat tire and be late. Like, that's the other benefit, which we talked about on other episodes, of having a crew. If everything is reliant on one person and life happens, you know what I mean, then your time and money, where does all that go if you've got one person that you're depending on to get all these things taken care of? This is going to be a really great episode.
And y'all, we're holding back. We could go on and on and on about this, but we're trying to keep it digestible. And we're also trying to show you the value of bringing a crew on with experience for them to think through all these things for you, because it's a game changer. And we've seen clients try to just like handle this themselves, and all they hire is maybe a freelance shooter and maybe have an assistant. And every once in a blue moon, a unicorn person can make that work. For everybody else, it is so worth it to pre-plan, work with a producer, hire people who are project managing for you, because then you can have fun and you can show up and have great energy and feel supported and nourished and excited and VIP. Like, that's the feeling you want to translate on camera. And even if you were recording audio, you know, when people record audiobooks, they talk about how important it is that they felt taken care of and their producer was there, and it goes across mediums. So we're about to share with you our friend Heather, who's also a producer of multiple podcasts and a lot of different content. She works with the university in the arts program, and we will wrap it up after we talk to Heather. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the guest segment for this episode about how to plan a shoot. I'm here with my lovely friends, Callie Fox and Heather Francis, who are actually the co-hosts of multiple podcasts. And they are seasoned education experts. They work in the arts community with universities and schools. They're brilliant. So the reason I'm so thrilled that they stopped by to be part of this episode is because they've done a few shoots. Heather here has produced quite a lot of shoots and podcasts and content. And so I want you to hear from her about things you learned on set from being a producer in the field, as we say, things that you found to be the most valuable when planning a shoot, especially if you're with a crew, gear. You, I know, often are recording in the field, as we say. So I'm going to pop up camera and you guys get to hear it from these two amazing co-hosts. And specifically, Heather, I put it on you because you're a producer.
Okay. Thanks, Christine. I'm excited to share because this last year I produced so many videos and podcasts. And after a year, I was like, oh, well, that was a good education. And I felt like everyone on set was looking to me to be the leader, to be the producer. I even got this like blue fuzzy producer coat so people could find me on set and, you know, come to me and ask me the questions and I would have the answers. And felt like my number one answer was always like, well, what do you think? Because I needed time to create my answer about what I was going to be doing. So let's see, I worked with a lot of different talent, and this last year I worked with a lot of Native American talent, and Kelly worked with them as well. And that was an interesting learning experience because there was definitely some cultural sensitivity to take into account. So the tenor of storytelling, the Indigenous practice of relationship building, the inclusion of family, how long a story takes, like what's important to tell in a story is a big part of Indigenous culture. And so we did a shoot where we had a transcript, which we wanted to be accurate and authentic for the Native communities. And so we had it approved by a Native American expert who was Native American themselves from the University of Utah. So we didn't want to like deviate from the script at all because it was factual information about US tribal relations in the United States. So it's already like a really heady topic. We have everything approved. We believe it's culturally sensitive. We have a Native American voice and talent, a great storyteller who I'd had in my classroom as a teacher. But then we had an outdoor shoot with rain possibilities, student employees as our staff and crew, and then our Native American guest who we actually hadn't gone over the script with him, and we had a teleprompter. So it was rough. And what I learned is you gotta like rehearse. If it's a script, you have to rehearse it quite a bit. Like the best thing is to capture your talent's normal, natural tenor to tell a story in the way that they would like to tell a story. So the script and the teleprompter was a challenge. But in the end, he was a fabulous storyteller. We had great editors. We made it work in editing. And I have to say that the outdoor shoot, I'm so glad we made it through the rain. We had to stop and pause a couple times. But the gorgeous setting and being on like the Ute people's land and having a Ute storyteller telling the story, that was magical. So it ended up being really great, but I learned pretty quickly.
You came back after that shoot and you talked about how you had never really seen as a separate category talent management. And that doesn't mean, managing people in a negative way. It means honoring and respecting the strengths and weaknesses of your talent. And that's what that day taught you was, as a producer, how do I go through and examine what can my talent do and what can't they do, and how do I make sure I align their strengths with our outcome? And I've really watched you apply what you learned that day in subsequent shoots. You did marvelously with him on the fly, but I've also watched you improve all the goals that you mentioned to me that day as you learned what talent management is.
Right. I feel like it had really improved by the time we went up to the Bear River Massacre commemoration ceremony, and we were recording more Native storytellers. And I knew, he was diabetic. He hadn't eaten yet. We knew we needed to take care of the talent in terms of like physical health and wellness and making sure we weren't, and it was cold, it was January.
It was bitter cold.
But again, a beautiful setting, like steamy river, blue skies.
Sunny, but cold.
On set, the relationship with the talent and the content and the environment is like an ongoing and unfolding relationship. So you can prepare like all the equipment, you can prepare all the food, you can prepare all the content and script, but the way the environment changes, the way your relationships change, it is always evolving. So you have to be prepared to problem solve on the spot. And I learned that having a whole team with me was the best way to problem solve, because as the producer holding the whole picture, I had so many people who can manage other details.
It was our cameraman who, in one of the early post-production meetings, he came forward and said, okay, look, you guys, you need to see this from my point of view. When you guys asked me to take this camera, but I had to change this lens and those batteries, it takes me 20 minutes to change cameras. You can't have me do things on the fly immediately because somebody's available in this minute. Here's my limitations. And it wasn't until our cameraman gave everybody their limitations that they understood the kinds of things they needed to plan ahead for in their project briefs. And those post-production meetings where we all listen to each other and say, this was my experience, this worked, that didn't work, is where we learned to become a team because we didn't understand each other's problems. And we learned so much from the cameraman after that first one, and the whole team's eyes were open, and we learned to be more sensitive and the importance of working together as a team. And he was just so kind to sit down and say, I tried to give you this when you asked for it. Here's why I couldn't do exactly what you asked for, and here's what I did instead. And the next time we were much better at supporting the requests we were making.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about like sharing roles and like stepping in and taking opportunities, but it was the Think Like the Producer podcast that taught me about all the different roles that make up a team. And I also feel that our cameraman, because we've really focused him just on filming and just on editing, it gave him the space to be like, okay, if this is what I'm holding, then here is what I need, rather than, all the time, whatever they ask me to do in the moment, that is what I will do. And it can be stressful, but when there's a clear plan and open communication, that works better.
And we all got much better at the activity. So each of those steps is really important.
Okay, so we are wrapping up our episode about planning your shoot, especially your video shoots, but goes for all kinds of recording sessions if you're doing something high quality with a team. We hope these stories and these insights are helpful, not scary. Honestly, you make it work no matter what, and everyone has great stories of making it work. Even with all your best laid plans, things can go sideways. So it's a good attitude to have, but we wanted to share with you a variety of perspectives so that you feel really empowered to either hire a team and know what they're taking you through when they're pre-production, or if your team is taking this on, for them to understand what needs to happen before you actually get to a shoot, and the planning and giving yourself the space and grace to do your best and really enjoy it and not overload yourself. It's always worth it to build in buffer time. It's always worth it to build in an extra day or a half day to do pickups. I mean, Tiff and I totally have buffer time built in on day 2 of our shoot for this season, just to do pickups, just to add in things we may have thought of over the course of the 2 days. I mean, we're about to take a coffee break, lunch break, like we're practicing what we preach. So we hope this is helpful, and please subscribe to the channel because you want to see the full season. As we've mentioned, this is a season you want to watch, but you can also listen on podcast apps, and we will see you in the next episode of Think Like a Producer. And a lot of shades.
Look at that. Bam, just out there. Okay, ready.
Okay.
I would stay down here, but I don't know, it's just not like, I was like, I don't know why my feet are really tight and it's not comfortable.
Greatness with a digital slate.